Here we go, the story of Thomas and Eleanor. It all started on a day filled with sunshine and promises, their wedding day. Eleanor, with her sparkling eyes and a smile that could light up a room, walked down the aisle. Her dress, a beautiful white gown, flowed behind her like a gentle stream. Thomas, waiting at the altar, felt his heart swell with love. He knew, without a doubt, that he was the luckiest man in the world. They had met years ago in college, sharing late-night study sessions and silly jokes. Their connection was deep, a bond built on trust and shared dreams. They dreamt of a cozy little house with a big garden, filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. They imagined traveling the world together, exploring new cultures and creating lasting memories. Today, all those dreams felt within reach. As they exchanged vows, their voices trembled with emotion, sealing their promise of forever. The future looked bright, filled with endless possibilities and a love that seemed unbreakable. The reception was in full swing. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed through the grand hall. Thomas and Eleanor danced their first dance as husband and wife, their eyes locked in a loving gaze. Everything felt perfect, like a scene from a fairy tale. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned towards the entrance as a woman entered the room. She was strikingly beautiful, with long, dark hair and a dress that shimmered like the night sky. Her name was Isabella. She moved with an air of confidence and mystery, captivating everyone in her path. Thomas, still holding Eleanor's hand, couldn't help but notice her. There was something about her that drew him in, an undeniable allure that he couldn't explain. He felt a strange pull, a feeling he had never experienced before, threatening to disrupt the perfect world he had built with Eleanor. Isabella's arrival was like a sudden storm cloud on a sunny day, casting a shadow over their joyous celebration. Thomas tried to shake off the feeling, to focus on Eleanor, on the woman he loved and had just married. But Isabella's presence was a constant distraction. He found himself stealing glances at her across the room, drawn in by her enigmatic smile and the way she carried herself. A battle raged within him. He loved Eleanor, he truly did. She was his best friend, his confidant, the woman he had always imagined spending his life with. But this sudden, overwhelming attraction to Isabella was confusing and unsettling. He questioned everything he thought he knew about himself and his feelings. Was this just a fleeting infatuation, or was it something more? He felt torn between the familiar comfort of his love for Eleanor and the unknown allure of Isabella. The joy of the wedding day was quickly fading, replaced by a growing sense of unease and uncertainty. He felt trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, unable to think clearly or make sense of what was happening. The moment came during the toasts. Thomas, supposed to be expressing his love and gratitude to Eleanor, stood frozen, his mind racing. He looked at Eleanor, her eyes shining with happiness, and then at Isabella, who was watching him intently. Driven by a force he couldn't control, Thomas grabbed the microphone. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. Instead of the loving words everyone expected, he blurted out, "I can't do this." A gasp rippled through the crowd. He continued, his voice trembling, I can't marry Eleanor. My heart belongs to someone else." He turned towards Isabella and, in a voice filled with desperate longing, declared, "Isabella, I love you." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Eleanor's choked sob. The fairy tale had shattered, replaced by a nightmare of Thomas's own making. He had made a choice, a terrible, irreversible choice that would change everything. Eleanor's world crumbled around her. The tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. The pain in her heart was unbearable, a sharp, agonizing ache that stole her breath away. She looked at Thomas, the man she loved, the man she thought loved her, and saw only a stranger. The shock of his betrayal was like a physical blow, leaving her weak and trembling. Without a word, she ripped off her wedding veil, the delicate fabric tearing in her trembling hands. She turned and fled, her white dress dragging behind her as she ran out of the hall and into the night. The wedding guests watched in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before them. Some gasped, others whispered, but no one dared to approach her. Eleanor was alone, heartbroken and humiliated, her dreams shattered into a million pieces. The perfect day had turned into the worst day of her life. As Eleanor disappeared into the darkness, a wave of regret washed over Thomas. The adrenaline that had fueled his impulsive declaration vanished, leaving him with a chilling realization of what he had done. He looked at Isabella, expecting to see a reciprocal expression of love, but her face was unreadable. He had destroyed his life, hurt the woman he loved, and for what? For a fleeting infatuation, a moment of madness. The enormity of his mistake hit him like a ton of bricks. He had thrown away years of love and trust for a fantasy. The faces of his family and friends, filled with shock and disappointment, swam before his eyes. He had not only hurt Eleanor but had also alienated everyone who cared about him. The grand hall, once filled with joy and celebration, now felt like a prison, trapping him with the consequences of his actions. A deep, guttural sob escaped his lips as the reality of his situation crashed down on him. He had made the biggest mistake of his life. Thomas, still reeling from the weight of his regret, turned to Isabella, seeking some kind of solace or affirmation. "Isabella," he began, his voice hoarse, "I did this for you. I love you." Isabella simply stared back at him, her expression cold and detached. "You did this for me?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. "You flatter yourself, Thomas." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "I have no romantic interest in you whatsoever." Thomas was stunned. But you looked at me like." Isabella cut him off. "I looked at you like you were a pawn in a game. Eleanor is a dear friend of mine. You hurt her badly years ago, and I decided you needed a taste of your own medicine. Consider this payback for breaking her heart back in college." She gave him a cold, satisfied smile. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Thomas. I believe you've earned it." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Thomas completely and utterly alone. His world had just imploded, and he had no one to blame but himself. The following days were a blur of shame and isolation for Thomas. His phone rang incessantly, but he couldn't bring himself to answer. Each unanswered call was a reminder of the people he had hurt and disappointed, his parents, his siblings, his friends, and most of all, Eleanor. He ventured out only when necessary, to buy groceries or run errands, but he was met with disapproving stares and hushed whispers. The small town where he lived had always been a place of comfort and familiarity, but now it felt like a hostile environment, filled with judgment and condemnation. His family, heartbroken and angry, refused to speak to him. His friends, once loyal and supportive, distanced themselves, unable to forgive his betrayal of Eleanor. Thomas was completely alone, ostracized by his community and haunted by his regret. He had become a pariah, a symbol of infidelity and recklessness, and he knew that he deserved every ounce of the scorn that was directed his way. His life, once filled with promise and happiness, was now a desolate wasteland. Driven by a desperate need for forgiveness, Thomas began to write letters to Eleanor. He poured his heart out, expressing his deepest regrets and acknowledging the pain he had caused. He didn't try to excuse his behavior, but he tried to explain the confusion and impulsiveness that had led him to make such a devastating decision. He left the letters on her doorstep, hoping that she would read them and understand the depth of his remorse. He knew that he didn't deserve her forgiveness, but he couldn't bear the thought of her hating him forever. He also tried to reach out to her family and friends, offering apologies and explanations, but his attempts were met with cold rejection. No one was willing to listen to him or offer him a second chance. He was completely alone in his guilt and despair. Despite the overwhelming odds, he refused to give up hope. He was determined to earn Eleanor's forgiveness, even if it took the rest of his life. Eleanor received Thomas's letters, her hands trembling as she held them. The words blurred through her tears. She read each one, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. The pain he had caused was still too raw, too deep. While she acknowledged his remorse, she couldn't bring herself to forgive him. The trust that had formed the foundation of their relationship was shattered beyond repair. She couldn't forget the humiliation she had suffered, the public rejection that had left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. Her friends and family rallied around her, offering support and encouragement. They reminded her of her strength and resilience, urging her to focus on her own healing and happiness. Eleanor decided to take their advice. She knew that she needed to move on, to rebuild her life without Thomas. Forgiveness might come eventually, but it was a long and difficult journey, one she wasn't ready to undertake. She gathered the letters and placed them in a box, a reminder of the love she had lost and the pain she had endured. Eleanor decided to focus on herself and her dreams. She had always wanted to open her own bakery, a cozy little place filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and sweet treats. She started small, baking cakes and cookies for friends and family, slowly building a following. With the support of her loved ones, she found the courage to take a leap of faith. She secured a small loan and rented a storefront in the heart of town. She poured her heart and soul into creating her dream bakery, decorating it with bright colors and filling it with delicious creations. The bakery became a haven, a place where people could come to enjoy a sweet treat and escape the stresses of daily life. Eleanor found solace in her work, channeling her energy and creativity into building something beautiful and meaningful. She was finally healing, finding strength and resilience in the face of adversity. Her bakery became a symbol of her strength, a testament to her ability to overcome heartbreak and create a life filled with joy and purpose. While Eleanor was building her new life, Thomas was sinking deeper into despair. The regret consumed him, a constant gnawing ache in his heart. He replayed the events of that fateful day over and over in his mind, torturing himself with what-ifs and could-have-beens. He stopped going to work, unable to face his colleagues and clients. He neglected his appearance, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. He spent his days holed up in his apartment, staring blankly at the television or gazing out the window, lost in his thoughts. He lost interest in the things he once enjoyed, his hobbies and passions fading into insignificance. He rarely spoke to anyone, isolating himself from the outside world. The vibrant, outgoing man he once was had become a shell of his former self, a prisoner of his own remorse. He was haunted by the image of Eleanor's tear-streaked face, a constant reminder of the pain he had inflicted. He felt utterly lost and alone, with no hope of redemption. Months later, Thomas, venturing out for a rare walk, found himself drawn to the local park. He sat on a bench, lost in his thoughts, when he saw her. Eleanor was across the park, laughing and chatting with a group of friends. The sun shone on her face, highlighting her radiant smile. She looked happy, truly happy. He watched her from a distance, a mix of emotions swirling within him. There was sadness for the joy he had stolen from her, but also a sense of hope seeing her thriving. He wondered if she had finally moved on, if she had found peace. He also questioned whether he deserved a second chance, whether it was even possible for her to forgive him. The sight of her happiness both warmed his heart and intensified his regret. He knew he had no right to approach her, no right to disrupt her newfound peace. But the longing to speak to her, to apologize once more, was overwhelming. He continued to watch her, a silent observer, contemplating his next move. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. As Thomas was about to leave, Eleanor, while walking with her friends, turned a corner and bumped directly into him. The shock was evident on both their faces. "Thomas," Eleanor said, her voice barely a whisper. "Eleanor," he replied, his heart pounding in his chest. An awkward silence descended between them, broken only by the chirping of birds and the distant laughter of children. Eleanor's friends, sensing the tension, quietly excused themselves, leaving them alone. They stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say or do. The air crackled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Despite the awkwardness, Thomas saw a flicker of the old Eleanor in her eyes, a glimmer of the woman he had once loved so deeply. It was a small spark, but it was enough to give him a sliver of hope. He knew this was his chance, his opportunity to finally say what he needed to say. "Eleanor," Thomas began, his voice thick with emotion, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know how truly sorry I am." He took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers for any sign of understanding. "I was confused, Eleanor. Isabella. She was a distraction, a fleeting moment of madness. But it doesn't excuse what I did. I hurt you, I humiliated you, and I destroyed our dreams. And for that, I will never forgive myself." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Eleanor. I understand if you never want to see me again. But I needed to be honest with you, to tell you how deeply I regret my actions." He looked at her, his eyes filled with sincerity and remorse. "I just hope that one day, you can find it in your heart to understand, even if you can't forgive." He had said his piece, laid bare his soul. Now, all he could do was wait for her response. Eleanor listened intently to Thomas's words, her heart heavy with a mix of emotions. She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of deception. What she saw was genuine regret, a deep sorrow that seemed to emanate from his very soul. She knew that she could never forget what he had done, the pain he had inflicted. The scars of that day would forever remain etched in her memory. But as she looked at him, she realized that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison her own heart. She had worked hard to rebuild her life, to find happiness and peace. Letting go of the past, even if it meant forgiving Thomas, was the only way to truly move forward. It was a difficult decision, one that required immense strength and courage. But she knew it was the right one. The decision wasn't about Thomas, it was about her own healing. "Thomas," Eleanor said softly, "I forgive you." The words hung in the air, a weight lifted from both their shoulders. But she quickly added, "That doesn't mean we can go back to the way things were. Too much has happened. The trust is gone." She continued, "But I believe that people can change. And I see that you are truly sorry. So, I'm willing to try. To be friends." Thomas's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. He knew that friendship was a far cry from the love they had once shared, but it was a start. It was a chance to rebuild some semblance of connection, to prove that he could be a better person. They agreed to take things slowly, to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of honesty and respect. It wouldn't be easy, but they were both willing to try. For Eleanor, it was a path to healing and moving forward. For Thomas, it was a chance to earn back some of the trust he had lost and to find redemption. Thomas embraced this opportunity with unwavering determination. He started small, offering to help Eleanor at her bakery, cleaning tables, and running errands. He never overstepped, always respecting her boundaries and giving her space when she needed it. He became her biggest supporter, celebrating her successes and offering encouragement during challenging times. He showed genuine interest in her dreams and aspirations, actively listening and offering helpful advice. He worked on becoming a better person, attending therapy and addressing the underlying issues that had led to his impulsive behavior. He knew that he had a long way to go, that earning back Eleanor's trust would take time and effort. But he was committed to proving that he had changed, that he was worthy of her friendship. He understood that his actions spoke louder than words, and he dedicated himself to showing Eleanor, through his actions, the depth of his remorse and his commitment to being a better friend. Years passed. Eleanor's bakery had become a beloved institution in town, a testament to her hard work and dedication. She had expanded her business, opening new locations and creating a thriving enterprise. She was happy, surrounded by friends and family, living a life filled with purpose and joy. Thomas remained a constant presence in her life, a supportive friend who always had her back. He had rebuilt his life as well, finding fulfillment in his career and building meaningful relationships with others. While the romantic spark between them never rekindled, they had forged a deep and lasting friendship. They shared laughter, offered support, and provided a sense of stability for each other. Their relationship was a testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of finding redemption, even after making terrible mistakes. They were living separate lives, but their connection remained strong, a bond forged in the crucible of heartbreak and regret. One sunny afternoon, Eleanor met a man named David at a baking convention. He was kind, intelligent, and genuinely interested in her and her work. Unlike Thomas, David valued her from the very beginning, treating her with unwavering respect and admiration. Their relationship blossomed slowly and naturally. David appreciated Eleanor for who she was, flaws and all. He loved her ambition, her creativity, and her kind heart. He supported her dreams and encouraged her to pursue her passions. He never pressured her, always allowing her to be herself. With David, Eleanor felt safe, loved, and cherished. She realized that she had finally found someone who truly deserved her love, someone who would never betray her trust. He brought a new kind of joy into her life, a quiet, steady happiness that filled her heart with warmth and contentment. She knew that she had finally found her happily ever after. Thomas watched Eleanor and David together, their faces radiant with love and happiness. He knew that he could never offer her what David could, a love built on unwavering trust and mutual respect. He felt a pang of sadness, a fleeting moment of what could have been. But it was quickly replaced by a sense of peace and acceptance. He realized that his greatest act of love was to let her go, to allow her to be happy, even if it wasn't with him. He had finally accepted the consequences of his actions, understanding that he had forfeited his right to be with her. He found solace in their friendship, cherishing the bond they had forged and supporting her happiness from afar. He had learned a valuable lesson about love, loss, and the importance of making amends. And in the end, he found a measure of redemption in witnessing Eleanor's happiness, knowing that he had played a small part in helping her find her way back to joy.